Mr. Hariri Masood. Welcome to this presentation. And Mr. Hariri, good afternoon. In Brazil is good morning. I think so. Have the different hours between any countries and any participants into this room. Okay.
Thank you.
Hi. You're welcome. Welcome to the presentation. I think so. I will start Mr. Hariri. Mr. Hariri, I will start. Just organization or is from Ontario Public Service, and he will mention the presentation for everyone. Okay, can you start, please?
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Andrew, for introduction, and hello, John, and other folks who are listening. Thank you very much.
Hi.
For spending time. Let me share my screen. By the way, I'm also in transportation business, so I might get to some examples there. Hope you've been enjoying the conference as I have since this morning. The title of talk is Storytelling and Story Listening in Agile. My name is Masood Hariri. I started my career in mid-90s with ERP implementation, Oracle e-business suite. Those who remember, at the time, folks were divided into two tribes, technical and functional, were each blaming each other when things went wrong. And I was unfortunate enough to do both task and act as a liaison between them, being yelled at from both sides. As a techie, I did performance tuning, a career that is now disappearing as cloud computing has made the scalability unrecognizable from the past, with abundance of resources ready to deploy from a pool. In those days, we had to make the best use of our limited physical resources. Like kids, when I was growing up, we had to keep our few toys in good order, fine-tuned, and repair them when needed. In the past 15 years in Ontario Public Service, I have been senior IT architect and business analyst, wearing the hat of product manager in Agile implementations. Since 20 years ago, with the release of Agile Manifesto, a new chapter in IT service design and delivery started that has impacted many aspects of our professional life. Hundreds of thousands of practitioners in most high-profile engagements now call their way Agile. In other advancements that have been in IT in the last 20 years, such as cloud computing, DevOps, that brought maturity to information technology that was unthinkable back in the 90s. Now we can release a piece of working software in every sprint safely without having to wait for change management committees to approve. Digital transformation that currently is ongoing in many organizations is about being part of that movement and taking advantage of that maturity. Then what is the role of Agile mindset in digital transformation? It is basically responsible to prepare the culture, the guidance for conversations. It motivated individual in a multidisciplinary team. At the heart of this conversation lies an interesting challenge of how IT and business interact. Business meaning customer. I use those two words interchangeably in this talk. The content of this presentation, the storytelling and the story listening, is about that conversation. Double or Discovery Alpha Beta Live is a playbook or is a framework for Agile. It is used mostly in Commonwealth governments such as UK, Wales, Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, Canada federal government, and a number of Canada's provincial governments such as British Columbia and Ontario. Double divides product delivery into 4 stages. The first stage is discovery. Discovery is meaning that it's a meeting place, a venue that we meet the storyteller, the business, and we hear about their operations, process, challenges, issues, pain points, grievances, etc. It is in this stage that we learn the language of business, the common language. The next is alpha. Having heard the stories at the venue, we need to choose a destination that the business can land happily, one that matches their vision, resolve their grievances, address their pain points. Here we analyze feasible solution prototypes and demo some of them, discuss hypotheses, and select the right solution. The next one is beta, the next phase. This is where multidisciplinary team, business, product manager, business analyst, designer, developers, and testers, and all fully engaged in a sprint activity, moving toward the solution that we've selected. Beta phase ends when minimum viable product MVP goes live with business operation. These are the exercises that we do at the Ontario Public Service, and it is our basically regular exercise in Agile or a framework. The last phase of this framework is live and is about continuous improvement of our product that is now at work, handling business operation. We designed the scope of minimum viable product. Therefore, some of the stories are left out in the backlog item here. We go back, start regrooming, bringing back those stories that were left out and add them to the product with the new sprints. It is as if we have moved to a new house. It is now time to gradually make it a home. That's what the live is. Now, coming closer to basically the storytelling and the story listening starts with interview with business or with customer. What did we do before Agile as a traditional thing? Anyone remembers requirement study? Then we prepared a comprehensive set of documents with use cases covering every scenarios, etc. Then signed it and handed over to development and got out of the way, letting them figure out what is written in black and white. Let's just say that that's not what we do in Agile. The storyteller in some playbook is called product owner, is the most important partner in our entire journey. There could be more than one person. Sometimes product owner is not even known to business. It emerges naturally after a couple of interviews. Then as a star, knowledgeable, motivated person, we get to know that individual. One important thing is that storytelling is voluntary. Contrary to the traditional requirement study, storytelling is voluntary job. It cannot be forced upon somebody. Otherwise, the quality is greatly compromised. It has to be done in the right session, in a relaxed setting with an open mind, such that the trust and partnership established. A lot of details can be recalled with a listener that is caring, attentive, and sympathetic. We have two modes of the interview. One is the discursive mode, that we can, in this mode, we jump from one subject to another. It's okay. That's how business will take it. We do not need to interrupt them. It is fine. That's how we started. with open-ended question and try not to impose a structure on interviews early and prematurely. The next phase or the next mode is the structure mode. As our understanding of the business grows and the mutual trust improves, we gradually move to a more structured and ask a specific question. It is in this stage or this mode that we start drafting our first stories and the first version of the stories. We also, in Discovery, we also do ethnographic research, and that is otherwise called in situ. It's about being in the environment physically, seeing things as they are happening, as the business going, seeing people, equipment, observing them, communication at work as they are in unfolding, and that will add to this quality of basically discovery. What is the purpose of discovery? It's the start of conversation between business and IT. Content of conversations are what? Acronyms, name, definitions, processes, events, roles, data flows, the meaning behind it, all expressed, that is in noun, verbs, adjective, etc. As if we are learning a new language, a common language. It is called ubiquitous language. It is the language of communication in the multidisciplinary team that will take on the task of creation and delivery of the product later on. It is in this stage that we learn the ubiquitous language. And learning this is only possible step by step, session by session, with listening, getting engaged in the story, feeling sympathy for grievances, pain points, recording everything, of course, with permission, and going over the materials later. Step away from it all and do some meditation, making some notes, and then attending the next session such that we are more prepared to listen and more prepared to understand and ask relevant questions from the business. Now, the two approaches to requirement and discovery in the old days, and we also do now, is a use case. Okay, the use case, what is the difference between the two? Let's say in the use case, removes ambiguity early on and with an arbitrary closure on understanding of the requirement. It does that with basically templates, mostly by templates. We use heavily templated write-ups to create a contract-like deal that all parties are obliged to follow after the sign-off. In contracts, the user story avoids early and arbitrary closure. It engages everyone in brainstorming instead of finalized black and white text. It will end up with a language that is gradually understood by everyone and is gradually more associated to the working software. But keeping this conversation going, we try to avoid rigidity in design. The other difference is that the use case assumes that language is a value neutral, is an objective tool in and of itself. That's an assumption. It writes it in clear steps and terms and aims to create a working software exactly based on requirement. What we do in use case is different. A use case alters the language, and it is through conversation. That conversation affects the requirement. Every time the requirement is affected again. And after each discussion, the multidisciplinary team that includes business can come up with new things that everyone agrees. With every change, some ambiguity, inherent conflicts, contradictions, all these get removed from the user story. Whereas in a use case, once we sign the requirement, some of those things are not even come to surface. Okay, now we're talking about the language. called it common language, how this common language gets basically evolved from during our discussion, from early notes during discovery interviews, and the first draft of user stories onward, the common language only gets better. Multidisciplinary teams start the conversation in this language, but when they are done and completed, the language are slightly changed or largely changed. That is different. Let's call that language, the new language at the end, call it unambiguous common language, or unambiguous ubiquitous language. This one belongs to the solution space. The first one belongs to the problem space. Each decision that we do during the sprints, or each discussion that we do, or each defects that is resolved and come up with some discussion affects the language, and we change our glossary. Now, when the language changes, what is our duty, or duty of the product manager or business analyst, is to make sure that decisions, agreements, negotiated meaning, conclusive discussions are all captured. It helps the language to become more minimal, more crisp, more uninterpretable, unambiguous, and even actionable, as it represents the working software in true sense. One could ask, the unambiguous common language is a copy of our working software as it gets closer to the working software. It's a copy of working software in human language. One could wonder which copy of the will outlast the other, the code or the common language. When the product is decommissioned, this copy could continue to contribute toward next generation of products. So one could argue that our unambiguous common language developed during the Agile sprints are even more important than the code. Now, we have that language. Now, what literature we can write in that language? Well, how do we write this? We need to be mindful of three criteria when writing in that language. First is the purpose. Ask ourselves, why do we write? Is this document going to be useful in creating the working software, or somewhere down the road in its life cycle? Or what is the purpose? The purpose should be one related to the life of the working software. The next criteria would be genuineness. The purpose of the people who are doing these documents, creating this literature, are they part of the multidisciplinary team? Were they involved in creation of working software, or they have just parachuted to help complete some documents? The latter is not desirable. What they create will likely end up on the shelf. The other factor is the component base. We better do our writing in a component base, in a topic-based authoring, such that each component have a life of its own with no duplication. They can leave, they can contribute to other products if needed, and they can be nicely part of a component-based content management system once this product has gone. So basically, if we have two products, linear documents or component documents, the linear documents is just written as a novel. In order to understand it, we have to read everything from cover to cover, and then there are a lot of duplications, overlap. The boundaries of components are not clear. Rather, the component-based document, each topic is clearly demarked, and can be used and can leave, and it can obviously, when it goes to the corporate content system, it can be maintained properly and used. In fact, one thing that we humans better not to create a document. Human creates component. Document will be compiled by systems, by later on using those components. That's a better way of doing it. So basically, as we discussed the documentations and stories we talked about, it's a user stories. We talk about that. What about technical designs and architectures? They are also part of write-up. They too need to be mindful and utilize the unambiguous common language. Let's call them a story of the application, a story of user and a story of application. There are two stories. Network design, cloud registration details, architecture components, software design. These are all samples of the story of the application. And the story of application is the journey we take to reach the product. Now, since the languages are spoken and the roadmap discussed in the Agile team are all used with the common language, even the technical one, in a sense, we can say that we have only one story of the product, the story of an acquaintance that we do during the interview and discovery, and a purposeful journey of a multidisciplinary team together that follows that acquaintance. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this story. I'm in Ontario, Toronto, a beautiful city, great province. I hope you come to visit and do business. There are, FYI, there are 250,000 lakes in our province if you come to visit. And 1/5 of the world's fresh waters are here. Thank you again. Back to you, Leandro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masoud Hariri. Thank you immensely for sharing with us your time and valuable content and your wonderful journey. I appreciate your presentation and in your journey with sharing with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leandro.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
We'll wait for the debate.
God bless you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. And now I would like to invite all members in this room to discuss the topics that were presented.
Yeah, here I'm back again.
Hi there. So nice to have a missing speaker, Cesar, the speaker that would participate in this block. Unfortunately, can't join us, so I will take part of the debate to collaborate with you. I hope I can aggregate here some ideas.
Thank you, Derton.
Yeah, I think we had two talks about how to write down our requirements or how to define our products, and that's a great topic. So a lot of people are challenged with this one, so we should have a lot of talk about it. Actually, I would like to know what is your favorite methods in writing stories. So what's your favorite story, maybe?
Are you asking me, John?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. That's a great question. The best, the stories, let's say, first to start with, who is my favorite storyteller and who is the least favorite storyteller, maybe. The funniest story I can share with you is when we go to business basically in public service, we call them business. Here, maybe in your sense, you call it customer. When we go to customer, some of them think that because we are in IT, they try to translate their story or their basically wording in an IT sense. And And you know, when you go to a French restaurant in US, is not a real French restaurant. It's the French cuisine that the American like.
Yeah.
It's not a real French restaurant. So that's a difficult situation when you try to convince them that, listen, you talk about your own issues, your business issues. Don't worry about which databases I access to get them, and those is that there I have difficult time. And so basically, to summarize, what the challenge is that we know we kind of know the agile mindset and what it is and involvement of business, but now to convince and to train, to motivate them to come into this culture and try to be what they are, the business, and they have the self-confidence that the business by itself, without knowing a word of IT, they can be useful. They can take part in the my son is keep calling me. They can take part in the journey, and they can be useful. They don't need to be an IT person. So the best experience I had was a police officer who was in transportation, and he was in the business. He came first into Agile, and then it took like 6 months, day in and day out. He was great. And then when he left, he was almost speaking our language and everything. He was very calm, quiet, but he knew everything about what he did. So I think the personality is important, the training, the one challenge is to bring the business into this atmosphere and tell them, listen, it is not that we are going to get something in writing and say goodbye and we get on with our life. You come with us day in, day out, and you participate. Don't be afraid. You're here, and most importantly, participate and speak up. When you say a demo, they say, oh, no, this is an IT thing. I cannot say anything. No, speak up and say, I don't like that. That feature is not what. When we get that engagement really going, that participation from the business, it's amazing what kind of discussion develops, John. There, it is. We have video recording of those things, and the brainstorming that takes place, the quality, and everyone takes part, and everyone's understanding changes. The requirement definitely changes. The business or product owner on the fly, they say, wow, I didn't know, I like this one. Let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. And that is a great difference between the time when we did, okay, the requirement in black and white, sign, and then goodbye. A lot of issues after go live and unbelievable.
And for me, it's like I like if you develop an application or something e-commerce, it's almost easy. Like my favorite one was my example was the 3 guys with the app on a festival, because a lot of people can understand it. For now, I have other projects, for example, creating a cloud platform, right, and used by data science specialists or by data scientists. That's much more far from the most people than ordering a ticket for a concert, which is, I guess, 95% of all people had ordered a ticket, but I don't know, maybe 1% of all people are data scientists. So you are more special world. And I think it's also okay, for example, if you're deep in creating a cloud platform, that you define it in a way which could also only be understood by real IT experts. It depends where you are moving.
Just to add one word to that when you're talking about, for example, a ticket purchase system, also we need to, in my experience, we need to make a difference between the product owner and the users. So the end users come to the interviews, should come to the interviews later and see the view, the screen, the look and feel and everything. The product owner would be someone who really know what is this thing about, where is it going to go, and those kind of vision. And I had the experience, I had different opinion with some colleagues to bring in users. So, okay, end users, before we know what we're doing, bringing the end user would confuse the process. Let's just go with the product owner, with the one who knows what's happening and have all the things. Then we select the end user, bring them into the process and have their feedback heard.
Well, I would not say so. But it depends on once I started a product and I asked the end user before actually was a product. But you can run small experiments with lean startup approach. I was using it. It was just a test, developing a kind of quiz app. And the first test for my end user was I sent it just out questions to some users I might know to see if they want to take part in a quiz. That was a test. So you can start with very small experiments on the end users. But it depends. If it's inside a company, you sometimes, you can also die in requirements. Like if you send a question into companies, what features do you need? And it's company inside, people will tell you about 1,000 features, and actually they don't need the half of it. So it depends.
I agree in a sense that it really depends on the application. And what is it facing, citizens facing, public facing, or is it a small group of people in the company? Every engagement is unique, and we need to. And frankly, that's how we make our living. If we could formulate that to every engagement and one formula, then we would be out of business.
But I think the guy who's involving the user should be the product owner. If you work with a product owner.
Mm-hmm.